For decades, the Bermuda Triangle has been absolutely feared as the most deadly, deceptive patch of ocean on Earth. I mean, we've all heard the stories, right? Dozens of planes, ships, and hundreds of people just simply disappearing into thin air, or, well, into the ether. But today, we're going to put those ghost stories aside. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to use actual hard data to unmask the myth and see what scientists are really finding in these supposedly treacherous waters.
Here's a quick look at how our investigation is going to unfold today. We'll start with number 1, the legend and the missing. Then 2, origins of the mystery. 3, crafting a conspiracy. 4, the science of the triangle. 5, what the data reveals. And finally, number 6, the unremarkable truth.
All right, let's jump into part 1, the legend and the missing, tracing centuries of vanishings. We're beginning our journey in a vague patch of the North Atlantic, bounded basically by the U.S. coast, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, an area that has supposedly claimed boats and planes for centuries. Now, to really understand this, we have to trace it way back, half a millennium ago, actually, with Christopher Columbus. Get this, in 1492, Columbus sailed through what we now consider the Triangle, and he recorded in his log that his compass was acting completely strangely. He even reported seeing this weird, candle-like light on the horizon. Moving forward to the early 1600s, the English ship Sea Venture wrecked in a hurricane there. And that was a very real tragedy. It actually inspired Shakespeare's play, The Tempest. But the legend as we know it, that really crystallized in the 20th century. In 1918, the massive USS Cyclops cargo ship just vanished. And then, culminating in 1945, you have the infamous Flight 19, where a group of 5 Navy torpedo bombers disappeared without a single trace. Think about the sheer dread back then. It was captured perfectly by President Woodrow Wilson after that massive 542-foot USS Cyclops and its 300 crewmen vanished without even a single SOS call. The ship was hauling 10,000 tons of manganese ore, and to this day, it remains the largest loss of life in U.S. naval history that wasn't directly related to combat. You can definitely imagine how a shock like that really set the stage for the public to start imagining something supernatural was going on. So let's move on to part 2, origins of the mystery and how fables became a cultural phenomenon. Because how exactly did these tragic but isolated maritime disasters morph into this globally feared paranormal phenomenon?
Well, here's a crazy fact. This shape-shifting area didn't even have a name until 1964. That's when an author named Vincent Gaddis decided to connect the dots for a pulp magazine called Argosy. He literally coined the term Bermuda Triangle. By drawing a totally arbitrary line from Florida to Bermuda to Puerto Rico and back to Florida, he grouped all these disparate disappearances together into one neat little package. And the funniest part? The exact dimensions aren't even agreed upon by scientists today. Approximations range anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles. But simply giving it that catchy name, that changed everything.
And you really see the fabrication of this lore when you compare the spooky stories to the official records. Take the Ellen Austin ghost ship, for example. The legend claims that back in 1881, the Ellen Austin found an abandoned ship, put a prize crew on it, and then watched as that crew mysteriously vanished in a fog. Then they tried again and lost a second crew. It's a fantastic, super spooky ghost story, right? But when we look at the actual Lloyd's of London Register of Ships, the Ellen Austin's 1881 journey is officially recorded as completely uneventful. The ghost story was entirely fabricated.
All right, part 3, crafting a conspiracy, cashing in on the Cold War paranoia. Because once you plunge this newly named Bermuda Triangle into a cultural era already filled with hearsay and anxiety, it quickly became the ultimate canvas for conspiratorial fantasy.
Scores of authors saw an opportunity and cashed in on the frenzy. The biggest was definitely Charles Berlitz. His 1974 book sold a whopping 20 million copies by suggesting these wildly imaginative, straight-up sci-fi explanations for the missing crews. For authors like him, absolutely nothing was off-limits. As his theories show, he proposed the mythical city of Atlantis was somehow pulling ships down. He suggested extraterrestrial interference, which, fun fact, actually inspired Steven Spielberg's movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he depicted the Flight 19 crew as alien abductees. Berlitz even pushed the idea of trans-dimensional portals under the sea. During a time when science was answering so many of the world's questions, the Bermuda Triangle offered this tantalizing, unsolvable riddle that people were just eager to buy into. But let's get back to reality. Part 4, the science of the triangle. Natural phenomena over the paranormal. It is time we evaluate what is physically happening out there in these treacherous waters.
A lot of people theorize that compasses malfunction in the triangle due to magnetic declination. Now, for a quick geography refresher, you've got true north, which is the static geographic North Pole, and then you've got magnetic north, which is constantly shifting and is what actually attracts a compass needle. The variation between these two is called compass variation. Now, one of the huge prevailing theories was that the triangle was one of the only places on Earth where a compass points to true north instead of magnetic north, and that was throwing off inexperienced sailors.
But here is where that compass theory totally falls flat today. It all comes down to the agonic line. That's the imaginary line where true and magnetic north perfectly align. Now, it actually did pass through the Bermuda Triangle centuries ago, but scientific monitoring shows it shifts about 0.2 degrees every single year. Today, it's drifted entirely out of the region and is firmly over in the Gulf of Mexico. Furthermore, experienced captains and pilots are completely aware of magnetic declination anyway. They know exactly how to calculate it and compensate for it.
So instead of magnetic anomalies, a perfectly natural, though terrifying, navigational nightmare is to blame here: the Gulf Stream. This massive ocean current travels incredibly swiftly right along the western edge of the triangle. We're talking 4 or 5 knots per hour in some spots. To put that into perspective, that is up to 300 times faster than the Amazon River. This powerful current can easily throw a sailor hundreds of miles off course. And if a ship or plane does tragically go down, this rapid, turbulent water swiftly carries away the wreckage, basically erasing the evidence of the disaster before anyone can even mount a search.
And while the sensational media loves pointing to things like explosive methane gas burps, researchers note far more plausible culprits. Rogue waves, for instance, those aren't a myth. Scientists have actually recorded them reaching over 84 feet tall in this area, which could easily overwhelm any vessel in seconds. We also see headlines about those huge methane craters discovered in Norway, with people desperately trying to link them to the triangle. But marine geologists say it's highly, highly unlikely to be the cause in the Atlantic. Honestly, the most straightforward scientific explanation: the brutal Caribbean hurricane season, which passes right through the dead center of this area. Which brings us to part 5. What the data reveals: hard statistics in the modern era. Because hypotheses are great, but to truly unmask the Bermuda Triangle, we have to look at the hard aviation and marine data. Let's leave the lore behind and look at the actual numbers. When we dive into the 2021 Lloyd's List shipping data, a pretty startling reality is exposed. Across the globe, 1.8% of all vessels experience some sort of casualty during their voyage. But out of the over 8,600 boats that passed through the Bermuda Triangle that year, there were only 2 casualties. That is a staggering 0.02%. Let that sink in for a second. 90. Based on thousands and thousands of records, the danger of disappearing in the Bermuda Triangle is actually 90 times lower than the global maritime average. The U.S. Coast Guard totally backs this up too, confirming that statistically, going missing in the Bermuda Triangle is literally no more likely than in any other traveled part of the ocean. And we have 3 decades of marine pollution data backing this up as well. They tracked over 9,000 incidents globally. Out of all of those, only 361, just 4%, happened in the triangle. And the types of incidents? They perfectly mirrored the worldwide pattern. It was mostly just normal mechanical or weather-related issues. But the single most telling data point here? 0 unexplained disappearances. None. Absolutely 0. And the aviation data mirrors this exact same reality, showing that even the infamous Flight 19 tragedy was heavily attributed to a disoriented pilot and tragic human error, not some transdimensional portal. When investigators actually looked at the real radio transcripts from Flight 19, they found the lead pilot thought he was above the Florida Keys, but ground analysis showed he was actually way off, over the Bahamas. So instead of flying west to hit the Florida coast like he should have, he kept flying east, deeper and deeper into the vast Atlantic Ocean, until those poor planes simply ran out of fuel. It's an incredibly heartbreaking tragedy of getting severely lost, but there is absolutely nothing supernatural about it. In fact, since 1965, there's only been one major commercial aviation incident over Bermuda, and that was just a severe turbulence event resulting in a single injury. All right, we've made it to our final section, number 6, the unremarkable truth and how the real danger is the weather. Let's reveal the true, albeit way less cinematic, threat lingering out there in the North Atlantic. Just a quick reality check on the extreme weather here makes things starkly clear. Florida has been hit by about 500 tropical cyclones historically. That is more than any other U.S. state. Puerto Rico gets brushed or directly hit by hurricanes up to 4 or 5 times a year. And Bermuda gets slammed by damaging cyclones every 6 to 7 years.
In an era before we had modern satellites and weather tracking apps on our phones, those wooden sailing ships honestly didn't stand a chance when these sudden, massive storms blew in. So here is our final verdict. Modern data proves that regions like the South China Sea and the East Mediterranean are statistically far, far more hazardous. The Bermuda Triangle doesn't even crack the top 10 most dangerous ocean regions in the world today. With modern navigation, satellite communication, and advanced weather forecasting, thousands of vessels cross this exact space every single day, completely without incident. The numbers simply do not lie.
So I'm going to leave you with this thought today. In a chaotic world, the statistical truth proves this supposedly cursed triangle is actually fabulously unremarkable. And honestly, couldn't we all use a little more unremarkable right now? It really is fascinating how human nature just wants to cling to a mystery, right? We want Atlantis, we want UFOs, but when you look at the overwhelming, hard evidence we've covered today, the reality is that the Bermuda Triangle is just an ordinary, highly trafficked, and heavily weathered part of the ocean. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the mysteries around us with good, hard data. See you next time.